Hiruzen, wielding the golden staff, had been exchanging blows with Orochimaru for several rounds, neither gaining the upper hand. Meanwhile, Hashirama seized the opportunity to join the attack, overwhelming Hiruzen, who was running out of stamina to create clones. Despite a well-laid exploding tag detonating on Hashirama, their immortal bodies proved difficult to destroy through ordinary attacks. Their wounds did not bleed. Instead, endless dust from the world replenished any breakages. At this critical moment, Hiruzen recalled the fourth Hokage's technique, the only jutsu capable of controlling the reanimation jutsu. Just as he was about to use it, Orochimaru tore off his own facial skin, revealing a beautiful, youthful appearance. Though his sinister vertical pupils remained unchanged, his aura chillingly mad. As his former teacher, Hiruzen felt a mix of heartache, regret, and anger. Despite these emotions, he harbored no intent to kill Orochimaru, allowing his crazed laughter to echo into the dusk. Meanwhile, Sasuke, having undergone special training, had significantly increased his speed. Even with traps in his path, he managed to catch up with the three Sand Shinobi. Although outnumbered, with Gaara injured and Temari and Kankuro cautious due to being in enemy territory, reinforcements for Sasuke were imminent. They didn't want to entangle with Sasuke too much. Under Pakun's lead, Naruto and Sakura quickened their pace, nearly catching up to Sasuke. However, Pakun chose that moment to crack a joke, the scent in the air revealing they all used the same shampoo. Naruto didn't mind, but Sakura, the girl, felt quite struck by it. Temari instructed Kankuro to take Gaara and retreat, while she held off Sasuke. Considering the large amount of chakra exhausted in her previous battle with Shikamaru, she could only provoke Sasuke into using a substantial amount of chakra, buying time for Gaara and the others. True to form, Sasuke, seeking a quick resolution, unleashed one fire-release jutsu after another without pause. Temari's fan broke through Sasuke's fire-release attacks and pushed him into a trap, striking him with a kunai. Upon closer inspection, she discovered it was just a wooden substitute with an exploding tag already ignited. It was too late to escape, and Sasuke resumed his pursuit of Gaara and Kankuro. Temari could only pray for their safety. Honestly, as a sister, Temari did a decent job. Gaara, even in his rage, would listen to her words. As for Kankuro, a few extra words might make the grass on his grave over a meter tall. Seeing Orochimaru's youthful appearance, Hiruzen guessed he had mastered the art of eternal youth. Orochimaru had originally fled the village to become a rogue ninja because of his reckless human experiments in pursuit of immortality. His quest for eternal life was essentially body possession, and his next vessel was the already targeted Sasuke. Regretting his past leniency, Hiruzen, aware of Orochimaru's ambitions even in his youth, had repeatedly indulged him, even intentionally letting him go after discovering his human experiments. But this led to today's disaster. To rectify his past mistakes, Hiruzen finally resolved to kill Orochimaru. He created 2 clones and then performed the dead demon-consuming seal, summoning a fearsome reaper visible only to the caster behind him. Orochimaru, unable to see the reaper behind his teacher, continued to laugh triumphantly. Hashirama launched the darkness of the ninja art, enveloping Hiruzen in darkness and depriving him of sight, leaving him to passively endure hits. Embracing a fatalistic resolve, Hiruzen, amidst Orochimaru's taunts, remembered the legacy of Konohagakure. Where the leaf dances, the fire burns eternal. Even if Orochimaru killed him, the pillars of Konohagakure would not falter, and the village would not fall to a deserter like Orochimaru. Hearing of a forbidden seal technique unknown to him, Orochimaru grew uneasy. He could only see his teacher's resilient clone. He did not see the Reaper behind, who, respecting the caster's wishes to some extent, locked Hashirama and Hashirama in darkness, extracting their souls. Once Hashirama's dark jutsu was broken, the souls of Hashirama and Hashirama were sealed completely, and the dust fell away, revealing the true form of the reanimation jutsu. It turns out to be the 2 sound ninja subordinates of Orochimaru, who had previously participated in the Chunin exam. Now, their only remaining value is to serve as sacrifices for the reanimation jutsu. Hiruzen easily knocked away the Kusanagi sword. Enma, inside the Monkey King's staff, extended a giant hand trying to grab Orochimaru, but was blocked by Orochimaru's hidden shadow snake hands. In an instant, Hiruzen caught a grinning Orochimaru. The Reaper was already prepared behind Hiruzen, and from Hiruzen's chest emerged a claw covered in runes. As it began to touch Orochimaru's body, Orochimaru felt the threat of death. It wasn't a physical death, but a shiver from the soul. Orochimaru summoned the Kusanagi sword that had fallen to the ground. The sword, flickering with a cold light, aimed at Hiruzen from behind. At that moment, Enma had reverted to his original form, helplessly watching the Kusanagi sword fly towards Hiruzen. A flash of bright blood passed, and Enma caught the Kusanagi sword with his bare hands. Yet the sword was too long and had already pierced through Hiruzen's body. Orochimaru could not understand why Hiruzen did not dodge. Hiruzen told Orochimaru that the dead demon-consuming seal uses the caster's life as a price to summon the Reaper's power to absorb and seal the enemy's soul. The moment Hiruzen began the technique, his soul was pledged to the Reaper. Regardless of whether the enemy was sealed, his soul would be taken by the Reaper. This forbidden technique was the same secret technique used by the fourth Hokage to seal the Kyuubi. Orochimaru broke out in cold sweat, his hands forming seals but unable to perform any ninjutsu. The Kusanagi sword continued to stir inside Hiruzen's body, wanting to make Hiruzen die before him. Perhaps this could interrupt the dead demon-consuming seal. The two were locked in a fight to the death. Jiraiya was still at the edge of Konohagakure, struggling against a giant snake when a toad summoned by Jiraiya fell from the sky and crushed one. Jiraiya made a flashy entrance, but then remembered to ask about his teacher's whereabouts. Meanwhile, the pursuit in the forest continued. After Sasuke knocked down Temari, he caught up with Kankuro, who was moving forward with a burden. Temari caught up from behind. This time Kankuro stood out to block Sasuke, letting Temari take Gaara and escape. However, Sasuke's reinforcements had also arrived. Shino, who had placed bugs on Sasuke, proved to be more useful than Pakun. He intercepted Kankuro, allowing Sasuke to continue chasing Gaara. Kankuro easily gave up fighting him, something he always resented. Aburame Shino was always a low-key person. In Kiba's team, only Kiba's voice was usually heard, seldom the voices of Shino and Hinata. Hinata was shy, Shino was conceited. Both were manipulators, one of living beings, the other of dead matter. Kankuro huddled with a three-eyed puppet, extending chakra threads from his hands to control the puppet. Countless parasitic destruction insect techniques emerged from Shino's body. Normally relying on the host's body chakra for survival, they responded to the host's summons. These techniques, like two clouds of black mist, entwined around Shino's hands. The three-eyed puppet's poisoned blades, even without a wound, would poison on contact. The hiding Shino could only strategize accordingly. After several exchanges, Shino pretended to be incapacitated by the poison mist. After the puppet struck Shino's insect clone, every joint was filled with parasitic destruction insect technique. From afar, Kankuro could no longer control it. Kankuro only focused on the insects attacking along the chakra threads and ignored those behind him, ultimately being covered by the insects. Shino also inhaled a small amount of poison mist and passed out. Gaara, after sleeping on his siblings for 2 days and a night, finally woke up. The moment he awoke, he sensed Sasuke's arrival and quickly pushed Temari away. Faced with Sasuke's eyes filled with the same hatred and loathing as his own, he remembered his kind teacher Kakashi, while his own kind teacher was not there. Gaara could no longer hold back and awakened the Ichibi inside his body. Half of his body transformed into the Ichibi, its ugly face and black pupils marked with a cross, telling everyone that this was a true monster, an anomaly that could not exist in the world. Gaara's body was no longer affected by any injuries, but his intelligence seemed to have decreased, knowing only to use brute force to kill. Sasuke had to temporarily hide. Gaara's personality has completely changed. Temari, terrified out of her senses, Sasuke is surprised that such monsters exist in the world. The tense situation continues to spread the scent of death. Sasuke does not yet have Susanoo. He uses substitution jutsu and charges out of his hiding place. Gaara sweeps across, and a poor tree is directly broken open with a large gap. Sasuke, attacking from another angle, throws several shurikens, all blocked by Gaara's hand. Gaara catches the shurikens in his hand and rebounds them back to Sasuke. The cold blades, shining with Tsuchi light, are even more powerful, directly melting the tree branches. Gaara's strength increases. but the intense headache plunges him into the tragic memories of his childhood. As a child, Gaara, due to his terrifying power, could only play alone on a swing with a teddy bear, watching groups of children play soccer. He also admired them in his heart. He took down the ball with sand from a height, ready to give it to them, but the children, recognizing it was Gaara, panicked and ran away without even taking the ball. This provoked Gaara. He just wanted to return the ball to everyone. The sand that accompanied him entangled two children's bodies. At this critical moment, his guard ninja Yashimaru stopped his rampage. But now there is no Yashimaru to stop Gaara. Thinking of this, the hatred and evil in Gaara's heart surge out violently. He vows to kill everyone in the world except himself. He directly breaks several large trees that are in the way. Amidst Gaara's continuous screams, Sasuke is reminded of his own older brother, who brought him endless fear and hatred. He summons the courage to use Chidori, which still has considerable power in its early stages, almost like a divine weapon forged by lightning. The two clash in midair. Sasuke's Chidori directly cuts through Gaara's Ichibi's large hand. Gaara, screaming, falls onto a tree branch, but soon recovers from his injuries. Gaara is pleased, craving to defeat Sasuke, the man who can bring him pain. Sand flows out of his gourd, forming the tail of Ichibi as Gaara further transforms into a tailed beast. The tail and hands join together, surprisingly forming a slingshot, launching Gaara at high speed towards Sasuke, breaking the tree branch Sasuke was just on. Sasuke activates his Sharingan, predicting his trajectory. If it weren't for the Sharingan, he wouldn't have dodged that hit. Gaara repeats his technique, but Sasuke, unable to activate Chidori in time, finds Gugakyu no Jutsu ineffective against sand and can only block with his arms. After hitting and breaking a tree branch midway, he finally stops on a large tree. Sasuke remembers Kakashi's words. Based on his chakra levels, he can only use Chidori twice a day. Chidori must be used with Sharingan, and using it more than twice could be fatal. But unable to bear Gaara's provocative words, Sasuke uses Chidori again, unleashing the power of the cursed seal. Gaara's Ichibi transformed large palm is turned to sand and falls to the ground, but the next second, Gaara's large palm recovers and strikes a fatal blow towards Sasuke, lying immobile on the tree, only to be kicked away by Naruto, arriving just in time. In the vast forest of Konohagakure, reinforcements ran for 3 episodes and finally took effect. However, Naruto, though he kicked Gaara away, did not recognize him. It was Pakun who recognized Gaara. Knowing that the monster before him was the one who had twice frightened him, Naruto falls into a dominated fear. Hesitating, unable to launch an attack, Naruto is directly ignored by Gaara, who charges towards Sakura and others. Sakura, disregarding her safety, stands in front of Sasuke, her expression resolute and ready to face death. Much like Gaara's relative Yashimaru, the Ichibi-transformed Gaara refrains from killing her, just pressing Sakura against a large tree. Naruto takes the opportunity to rescue the immobile Sasuke. Gaara's head starts to ache again. Gaara, always extreme and living alone, doesn't understand the impression the Konohagakure ninja have given him during this period. Everyone steps forward, saving their disciples or companions, whether it's Guy or Sakura, all resembling the Yashimaru in his heart. Yashimaru, Gaara's uncle and a medical ninja, was always responsible for taking care of Gaara. Young Gaara was very cute, with sand always protecting him, even when Gaara himself held a small knife trying to hurt himself. The sand surrounding him wouldn't allow it. He never knew what pain felt like, and naively asked Yashimaru, "Will you hate me?" Yashimaru, as the uncle, was clearly heartbroken by the death of his sister, yet he still dearly loved his nephew. He was one of the few bright spots in Gaara's childhood. Encouraged by his uncle Yashimaru, Gaara, carrying a healing ointment, found the child he had accidentally injured while playing soccer. However, the child was ungrateful, calling him a monster, which reopened Gaara's nearly healed wounds. Then, a drunkard on the street saw him, and his fearful gaze once again provoked Gaara. The drunkard was covered by sand. Guilty, Gaara saw his father watching from the shadows. Rasa said nothing. On the rooftop, Gaara was targeted for assassination by a ninja sent by his father. Collapsing, his heart devoid of any feelings, he crushed the assassin ninja. Upon unmasking the assassin, it was his uncle Yashimaru, who had just been kindly advising him. He was sent by Gaara's father, Rasa, to kill him. Gaara completely broke down. The educational system of Tsunagakure is definitely flawed. Even healthy children are taught to develop issues. Yashimaru. Sobbing and clutching his head, he asked his dying uncle Yashimaru why he pretended to be a strange ninja to assassinate him. Yashimaru, his pupils colorless, simply turned his head to look at his young nephew and gently revealed the truth. He was ordered by the higher-ups, Gaara's father and Kazekage Rasa, to kill Gaara. This news made Gaara retch. Even though his father had always been cold, he had never expected his father would send someone to assassinate him, especially his own uncle, Yashimaru. As the Jinchuriki of Shukaku, Gaara was never able to stably control the power of Shukaku, which would eventually turn him into a monster threatening the village. To prevent future problems, Gaara had to be eliminated. Uncle Yashimaru willingly accepted this assassination mission. Human emotions are complex. Perhaps he also resented his young nephew for taking his sister's life. Yashimaru opened his coat, revealing a body full of exploding tags already ignited. The explosion naturally could not harm Gaara as the shield of sand protected him. Unable to withstand these blows, Gaara turned completely dark. After recollecting his memories, Gaara became even more ferocious. He asked Naruto if he was going to run away. Naruto finally managed to stop his trembling legs. He wanted to save his friend. At the moment, only he could fight. But without transforming into Kyuubi, he was naturally no match for Gaara. So he hurriedly attempted to use the summoning jutsu to call Bunta, but unfortunately, Naruto's wish was not fulfilled. Instead, he summoned a toad slightly larger than a tadpole, obviously Gamakichi, who had no combat power. He asked Naruto for food, otherwise he wouldn't play along. Naruto was furious. Although his initial month of training in summoning jutsu was all tadpoles, he still managed to summon Bunta. Why at such a critical moment did it fail again? Gaara's body began to deform again, with his entire head taking the shape of Shukaku's, leaving only a pair of human legs. Gaara launched a barrage of sand shurikens, which quickly approached Naruto. Holding Gamakichi, Naruto escaped the range of the shurikens, but the escape was not graceful, heavily tumbling onto a tree. Speaking of which, the trees in Konohagakure are truly numerous, large and sturdy, with many battles conducted from one tree to another. Naruto, seeing Gaara's lonely gaze, was reminded of his own past. He too had lived amid the dislike and loathing of others. Young Naruto could only be alone. If it weren't for Iruka-sensei, he might have turned darker than Gaara. And also thanks to Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi, Grandfather Hiruzen, Ichiraku, and others, whose positive energies prevented Naruto from turning dark and made him the brightest person, who should have turned dark the most. Inside the four violet flames formation, Orochimaru's soul had been dragged for a long time, like a tug of war. Touching the edge of death, Orochimaru could finally clearly see the figure of the death god behind his teacher. With a dagger bitten in his mouth and prayer beads wrapped around his arms, his eyes filled with nothingness and terror, Orochimaru had already seen the brilliance of the death god on his teacher's face. Desperate, he issued a dying scream. It was unclear how long this extreme tug-of-war would last. Orochimaru had already found that he could no longer control the Kusanagi sword. Enma still firmly held one end of the Kusanagi sword. Hiruzen seemed to have no chakra left, but by sheer willpower he did not fall and slowly extracted Orochimaru's soul. In the venue, Guy was still full of energy, having fought for 2 days and 1 night. The enemy shifted from Sound Ninja to Sand Shinobi, yet he remained as hot-blooded and youthful as ever. His taijutsu movements were concise and fluid, each punch and kick taking down an enemy. Kakashi, on the other hand, was much more complicated, employing Kage Bunshin, no jutsu, substitution jutsu, and traps, along with various other ninjutsu. The enemy kept coming in waves. Each fight was extremely tense. For Konohagakure, the situation was not optimistic. Naruto fell down time after time, but he kept standing back up. Quietly, Naruto took out a kunai and wrapped it with an exploding tag. Standing above, he reactivated the Kage Bunshin no jutsu. Dozens of Narutos charged down. Gaara extended 2 sharp claws, constantly knocking down Naruto's clones. But in the air, Naruto kept creating new ones. He found a blind spot in Gaara's defense. Under the cover of his clones, Naruto's real body, holding a shuriken, silently approached from behind Gaara, 1,000 years of death was finally used in real combat, creating an exceedingly awkward scene. It was something Gaara never dreamed could happen, being stabbed in the backside. As compensation, Naruto took a hit from his tail. But it wasn't over yet. Naruto detonated the exploding tag on the kunai, causing a massive explosion that severely injured Gaara's backside and blasted away half of his Ichibi form. Naruto's 1,000 years of death struck right at the base of Shukaku's tail, the weakest point in its defense. After a brief rest, Sasuke allowed Naruto to rescue Sakura and urged a quick retreat while he held Gaara off. Having witnessed the slaughter of his entire family, Sasuke couldn't bear the thought of losing his close comrades again. Listening, Naruto was reminded of those who had grown strong to protect their families and comrades. With his hands forming hand seals, Naruto's body erupted with blue chakra, shocking Sasuke. A white mist exploded in the forest, the real forbidden jutsu, Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, made its appearance. After the mist cleared, Gaara saw enemies everywhere. Naruto's clones filled a large portion of the forest. The sheer amount of chakra was astounding, stunning everyone present. Naruto alone surrounded the transformed Gaara, and the onslaught was too much even for the sand to defend. Gaara, almost out of sand, couldn't handle being bullied by someone he considered a nobody, and finally transformed into the complete form of Shukaku. He easily bound Naruto with sand. Gaara was about to deliver a killing blow, but just as he was shouting the final word of his sand burial, Naruto, drained of his own chakra, summoned the equally massive Chief Toad Bunta with the power of the Kyuubi. Bunta, with a pipe in his mouth, gave a sense of solid security. Even though he scolded Naruto for summoning him, he turned to see Shukaku of Tsunagakure, an old acquaintance. Bunta initially refused Naruto's request to help in the fight, but Gamakichi stood up out of loyalty, claiming that Shukaku had bullied him and that Naruto had saved him. Enraged, Bunta took down one of Shukaku's arms with a 40-meter-long giant cleaver, kicking up a blast of air that made it hard for the spectators to keep their eyes open. Faced with a formidable opponent, Gaara was forced to use the feigning sleep technique, falling into a deep sleep he hadn't slept in years to suppress Shukaku's consciousness, now needing to release it to deal with Naruto and Bunta. The real Shukaku awakened, laughing wildly, finally free to see the daylight. A ground-shaking battle officially began. The tall forests were merely slightly taller bushes in front of Bunta and Shukaku. Shukaku's destructive power was incredible. Even Bunta was slightly overwhelmed by the continuous chakra attacks. The only way now was to wake Gaara from his feigned sleep to stop Shukaku's ninjutsu and make Shukaku's consciousness fall asleep again. Bunta couldn't hold back Shukaku. He and Naruto had a pact, allowing Naruto to use transformation techniques on him, turning him into a fierce beast with claws and fangs to restrain Shukaku. But Bunta had already started a full-speed sprint. Amid the chaos, a figure flashed through Naruto's mind. As the smoke cleared, Sasuke's mouth hung open, filled with surprise and confusion. After a few days apart, he was astounded by how strong Naruto had become. Shukaku also opened its mouth wide. It discovered its old acquaintance. Kyuubi was grinning. Shukaku certainly did not want the detestable fox to get close. Even a fake one would not do. With a slap on its belly, the air was launched like a cannonball. Bunta couldn't get close. Fortunately, with his rich combat experience, he snapped a few trees, held them in his hands, and threw them, blocking a wave of air bullets. Taking the opportunity, he pounced forward and grabbed Shukaku with his claws. Naruto leapt up and fiercely beat the sleeping Gaara. The recently asleep Gaara was awakened by Naruto, having not slept for decades, just fallen asleep and then woken up. Shukaku's consciousness faded. Bunta was still being suppressed. While Naruto was trapped by the sand, Naruto looked at Sakura, who was also barely hanging on, entangled by the sand. As Shukaku, pushing the giant toad, was about to reach Sakura, Naruto had exhausted his chakra, deciding to fight with all his might. Naruto closed his eyes and prayed. The red chakra within him, ignited from his lower abdomen, instantly spread throughout his body. Kyuubi awakened. The chakra overflowed from Naruto. The swirling wind unzipped his coat. Naruto, enveloped in red chakra, punched towards Gaara, but was caught midway by the sand. Naruto then headbutted his opponent. Gaara's Ichibi could no longer keep up, turning into countless grains of sand. Collapsing, Bunta, too, was drained of energy. Taking his son Gamakichi, they returned to Mount Myoboku. The two, along with the sand grains, landed on a tree, right between the two sides of a large cleaver, the smooth blade reflecting half of each other's faces, also reflecting their innermost feelings. For a moment, the two seemed like twin brothers. Both were now utterly exhausted, yet neither would admit defeat. Naruto and Gaara had another clash in the air. The more resilient Naruto gained the upper hand, landing another punch on Gaara's face. They both fell to the ground. This time, truly calming down, Naruto looked at Gaara lying not far away, feeling a profound empathy. With no feeling in his limbs, he used his chin to touch the ground, slowly crawling like a worm. He was like a bright little sun, shining on the darkness over Gaara. Gaara, frightened, quickly shouted, not wanting Naruto to come close. The proud Gaara had never shown such weakness before. The approaching Naruto finally began his heartfelt speech, touching the most tender chords in Gaara's heart. Allowing the weakened him to be influenced by the love of others, Sasuke arrived. Telling Sakura had been saved, Naruto finally breathed a sigh of relief. Temari and Kankuro also came to rescue Gaara. Seeing Gaara beaten so badly for the first time, ultimately Naruto had a slight edge. Temari and Kankuro rescued Gaara. Gaara sincerely apologized to his brother and sister. His heart still turned towards the sun. Such a young him should have grown up healthy under the care of his parents and relatives. But reality forced him to disguise himself. Temari and Kankuro, momentarily at a loss for words, perhaps in shock and heartache. Hiruzen and Orochimaru were still at their limit. Kakashi and Guy were also dealing with various unknown jonin in the venue. Both still had not left the venue. The women and children of Konohagakure had already evacuated to shelters. Next was the moment to counterattack. It was time for the elders to take the stage. The first to appear was the head of the Yuga family, on the flat ground, facing a dozen sand shinobi, 8 trigrams, palms revolving heaven, more powerful than Neji. The old Ino Sishika CCH combination also refused to show weakness. Regrouped, started to sweep the enemies invading the village. In the forest, poisoned. Shino waited for his father to detoxify him. Konohagakure, the most powerful ninja village, began to show the power it usually kept dormant. On the rooftop of the venue, the battle between Hiruzen and Orochimaru finally reached its climax. Hiruzen realized that it was no longer possible to drag Orochimaru's soul into the embrace of the Reaper. Instead, he aimed to take away all of Orochimaru's ninjutsu, to render him unable to use them for life, ending his ambition. Hiruzen exerted his last bit of strength, pulled out Orochimaru's arms from his soul. The Reaper's blade fell, severing them, permanently sealed into the Reaper's belly. Orochimaru's arms were ruined. Even changing to a new vessel was futile. His soul no longer had arms. A sound body was useless. Amid Orochimaru's curses, this old man, who gave his all for the village, exhausted his last bit of energy and closed his eyes forever, his gaze lingering in the last moment of the mortal world, seeming to see the young Orochimaru, when Hiruzen closed his eyes, like a rotting log falling to the ground. Orochimaru, just previously filled with rage, seemed to have a trace of indiscernible sorrow, just a fleeting moment, never to be found again. Looking at Hiruzen's body, still with the Kusanagi sword inserted, Enma exerted his last strength and pulled it out. To maintain the dignity of the deceased, Enma lamented that Hiruzen, as a ninja, died a fitting death. Orochimaru ordered the sound ninja outside to remove the barrier. Being rendered useless without his hands, he had to retreat quickly. 4 sound ninja protected Orochimaru as they withdrew from the battlefield. The 3 Anbu finally had a chance to show themselves, but unfortunately, with a single leap, they were entangled by the sound ninja's spider threads and knocked down. Amidst a cloud of smoke in the venue, Kabuto and Baki also withdrew. On the rooftop of the venue, all the enemies had retreated, and only then was Hiruzen's body discovered. People gathered around Hiruzen, leaving only silence. At Hiruzen's memorial service, the sky was overcast with distant thunder rolling. All the people of Konohagakure wore black, and the dense clouds finally began to drizzle, as if even the heavens were mourning the old man. He brought light to countless children in Konohagakure, who lived in darkness. As he fell into eternal darkness, how many wept for him? Konohamaru cried his heart out at the funeral, and from then on, no grandfather would tolerate his pranks so indulgently anymore. He was no longer the little lord of the Hokage. Naruto also lost his protection. Hiruzen truly treated everyone in the village like family. Where the spirit of Konohagakure flies, the fire will never cease. The approachable Hiruzen cared for every child, chased after the mischievous Shikamaru and Chuji, praised the fresh flowers brought by Ino and Sakura, and even fought with Naruto over a bowl of ramen at Ichiraku. The past cannot be pursued, always too many beautiful memories, bringing forth an even more sorrowful scene now. Jiraiya stood alone, leaning against a post, silently standing in the rain. In Konohagakure, where his status and power were revered, he needed no one's company, nor did he want it. It was unexpected that he, well into his 50s, would taste the pain of losing a teacher, a pain so heart-wrenching. Thinking of Orochimaru, his feelings were incredibly complex. Just as Hiruzen's funeral concluded, a new crisis had already arrived. Members of the Akatsuki had set foot on the high walls of Konohagakure, wearing hats and garments adorned with cloud patterns, having already infiltrated Konohagakure.